Hello and welcome to the Hash Rugby Chat. Hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, and yes, it's that time of year. I'm in my Lions jersey because, you know what, it's November Internationals, and that's what we're going to be talking about on Hash Rugby Chat. November Internationals, and there was some rain. And joining me, I have a full house this evening, which is fantastic. So great to have you back, Ryan, after a long time away. Oh, sorry, you're halfway drinking there.
Sorry, just caffeine to keep me awake at this time of night. No, thanks for having me on.
Caffeine, I know.
Chatting some rugby.
Yeah, anyone from Moa that some would like to sponsor us, then yep, lovely Moa beer for me. And Stephen, our kind of professional voice man from Radio Sport. How are you doing, sir?
No, very good. Once again, an absolute privilege to be on your award-winning show.
Award-winning? Wow, I'm not quite sure.
Blessed to be here. It will be award-winning, trust me.
And finally, hello, Ashwin. Thank you so much for joining us on your birthday. I mean, wow, this is a bit special.
When you get as old as I am, it's just another day. Hey, Steve.
No, not really.
But I think to kick us off, then we should definitely start off with a rounding rendition of "Happy Birthday to You." Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Ashwin. Happy birthday to you. And Steve, you should use the microphone.
And many more.
Oh, hey, where's my present?
There's your present. Your present is you're allowed in the show. Well done. Yay.
Okay.
Paul, I hate to say it, but the award-winning isn't going to be in the Grammys, but
well, maybe it'll be in the diversity one. We can go. We can do it in we can do Mandarin. Julie Schuyler, Quila, Julie Schuyler, Quila, or French. Bon anniversaire pour vous. And I'm sure one of you guys can do it in Maori for us.
Oh yeah.
Go, Steve. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Perfect. Come out. Let's talk rugby.
All your audience has just fallen completely off the line.
No, they're all saying happy birthday. So welcome. Thank you. We've got Unbiased Rugby. We've got Christian. We've got Jack all in the chat there. All very good. Right then. Talking rugby, and obviously tomorrow night will be the All Blacks edition, so we'll keep the All Blacks, Maori All Blacks and Black Ferns stuff for tomorrow night. But tonight, I guess in some ways, that's the most important stuff that was happening was the Rugby World Cup qualification repechage. Did you boys see any of that?
I saw some highlights of the Canada game against Kenya.
Well, congratulations. You did better than I did. I didn't see any of it, but I did see the scores. And yeah, Canada put up a good performance against Kenya, 65-19, picking up the try bonus point. And there. But the shocker was Hong Kong losing to Germany, 9-26. Ryan, were you guys covering this on the Tribe Sports app?
Unfortunately, we didn't at the weekend, but I think we're going to look to cover the last two rounds and backfill the information from the weekend. To be honest, it kind of got lost in amongst all the other, internationals and stuff going on. I think, for the most part, Canada I would have them as warm favourites to advance from that, and certainly with the result from the weekend, it sort of played into their hands. If you look at the world rankings, they're actually ranked below Canada. But once you get outside of like a top 10 in any sport, I find those sort of rankings, they can give a bit of a false indication of strength of teams based on, who they play and the other teams around them.
Yeah,
and who they have available to them at any one time.
It's also a good point.
Are you guys aware of the kind of the story behind Germany rugby and their billionaire backer who has apparently stepped back in? Well, he bailed out, and then when they got into the to this one, he said, "Oh, you know, you can have another $300,000 just so that you can actually turn up to repechage because you haven't got enough cash to even do that."
I was reading up a bit about it, and there's this they basically sort of went, well, you've got us here and we're in this repechage, but now we're stuffed. but you're the one that got us here. So he goes, okay, here's another 300. And I believe if they make it if they qualify, he's going to give them another $1 for cash as well.
Well, I thought it was something like he would give them X amount if they could find 3 other people that would give the same amount. So they either got lots of cash or no cash.
and they got a quality international coach.
Oh, absolutely. That's where they went and spent their money.
Yeah.
It was on Mike Ford coming in. Now, if they do get to, I mean, how embarrassing would this be for World Rugby? Germany qualifies for the World Cup and then can't actually afford any coaches to go. So you'd think that they would, that World Rugby would have to find some cash from somewhere for them, wouldn't they?
Well, you sort of think it should have achieved an objective in terms of German rugby if they are able to qualify for the Rugby World Cup. There's possibly there might be some other German sort of companies that come forward or a sort of philanthropist billionaire that sort of chucks his hat in the ring to say, oh, well, I'll back you guys because you've made it to a World Cup.
Adidas, maybe.
Is that a German company? Oh, it is too. Exactly. Yeah, but that'd be a classic, isn't it? I mean, it would make a lot of sense for Adidas to sort of go, hey, look, we'll throw a bit of coin in behind you. We support the All Blacks and you.
Got to be a win-win for Adidas. Seriously?
Absolutely. Surely.
Well, isn't this one of these funny situations where Adidas and Puma are both in the same town, and they're originally run by brothers who used to work together, used to have a company together, and then split up. So Puma could back Germany to try and beat Adidas New Zealand. So just keep you up to date. That's what's going on in the repechage. And as Ryan says, keep an eye out on the Tribe Sports app to keep up to date with what's going to happen for the rest of this one. Canada play Germany this coming weekend. That looks like it's going to be the key match. And Hong Kong and Kenya then play just to basically try and stay in it. Now, eligibility is one that we've talked about before. It's come up a lot, and we're generally talking about residency. Now, have you? Gary Graham has been called up by Scotland. His dad he was born in Scotland. His dad played for Scotland, so it all sounds kind of legit and fine, and it is all within the rules. But he was called up by England in the Six Nations this year. Went to the training camp, didn't get into the side, and has now jumped up to Scotland. What do you feel about this? About someone who's been in training camp, obviously will have been through the training routines, got secrets from that, and then going and playing for another side, Steve?
I haven't really got a problem with it because he hasn't officially represented England for starters. So in that case, it kind of makes it okay. Obviously going to take a lot of knowledge across to Scotland, but I tell you what, I mean to say, if really and truthfully, if international coaches want to learn teams, there's a lot of secretive things that they can.
Yep, hopefully we're live again. For those of you on YouTube, if you've been watching on Periscope, you'll have to change over to the new one. Sorry, we dropped off there. You've got no problems with them doing that, Ryan, doesn't it? Am I the only one here that feels it's a bit strange?
I think the thing you have to kind of think about too is that being involved in a training camp is an indication that maybe you're on a team's radar, but it's no guarantee that you're going to be selected in any sort of upcoming window or any sort of approaching time frame. It's still a waiting game for you. And if Gregor Townsend's tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Hey, we want to pick you this week," I mean, I made a comment during the week about Brad Shields and what's going on and the sort of faux controversy that was stirred up by the Herald about his selection. A lot of these guys, they're elite athletes and they just want to test themselves at the top level. And if Gary Graham's been picked to play Test rugby, then why can't he, accept that offer just because he's been involved in a training camp? If he's still eligible, he hasn't been picked by England yet, then good on him.
Yeah, I guess my problem was how soon it was, and I guess the intellectual property that he's going to be taking away and across with Brad Shields, who never actually went into the All Blacks camp. Bundyaki will be talked about this week as well. Obviously, in those situations, they're not taking, or they haven't been part of the All Black setup, so I kind of didn't have as much of an issue with it. I don't know. Maybe I'm also wearing my England glasses at this point, but it just feels a bit strange to see someone flipping so close within a year, being picked by two different sides. Yes, he didn't turn out, but to go to training camps, it just feels strange to me. So maybe I'm the odd one out here. Everyone else thinks it's absolutely fine. On that one, and wet weather rugby this weekend. Did you enjoy seeing a bit of old school wet weather rugby rather than it always being dry and firm tracks? Let's go with the old man, Ashwin. How you doing?
I was disappointed, to tell you the truth. I was sort of like, I was disappointed that the rain was there because obviously it impacted the game at Twickenham. But I said we'll go into that more detail tomorrow. But in saying that, there was still a high level of skill on show in that game. So the wet weather obviously a bit of an impact, but they still put on a pretty good performance there. Obviously in Wales, they closed the old roof. They pulled the old sun tuff over the top and kept it dry in there. We'll talk about that a bit more. But at the end of the day, rugby is a winter game, so you got to be able to play in all kinds of conditions. I think we've just been spoilt with the way that the ground conditions are these days. Everything's generally even when it's raining, a hard and fast surface. The ball quality, etc. It's not a big leather ball that gets wet and you can't kick around. The grip on it gets improved year after year. So even in the wet, you can hold on to it. So it's not wet weather rugby like we used to play it.
Yeah, I'm kind of wishing I jumped in before Ashwin now because he took half my points, sort of straight out of my mouth. The points about the quality of the pitches, the technology with the ball and stuff like that. Wet weather rugby's a lot different than mid '90s or before that. And I actually, I enjoyed watching the England All Blacks game and how it took the All Blacks time to adjust, and without wanting to go too much into the All Blacks because of tomorrow night, that's part of Test rugby. Teams adapting to conditions, teams adapting their game plan and their strategy, and being able to cope with different different conditions.
All right, listen, I can't disagree with anything that the guys have actually said. One thing that I'm sort of curious about, I mean, Twickenham is a world-class stadium. Is there any train of thought that they'd ever look at covering that particular stadium? Just a thought.
No, I don't think so. I mean, Rugby Wales has got a lovely comment there from us on Periscope. Would you drive a Porsche with the roof open if it's raining? Oh, I'm not saying that Wales should have played with the roof open, to be honest with you. I do find it rather ironic that the one game that was dry and undercover was the lowest scoring game of the weekend, which I think is a long way to what you guys are saying, that actually wet weather isn't the game killer it used to be. It's not the leveler.
Yeah. To answer Steve's comment, or to add on to answer Steve's question, actually, is the fact is that you've got to remember that the RFU is short of a bit of coin, so it is difficult for them to get the money together to put a bit of glad wrap over the top of their stadium.
Actually, I just reminded myself I saw a very, very good wet weather game, admittedly most of it in the second half a few weeks ago at Eden Park, and I'll tell you what, that was what would we have, 40 minutes plus 20 minutes extra time, and that was 60 minutes of some pretty good code, you've got to say, guys. And we saw tries, we saw a great contest, and of course a great finish right at the end. Yeah,
the right finish. But I mean, just on that, and I mean, looking at that game and then obviously the game on the weekend, it just shows. I mean, the quality, the caliber of the people, the players as well is it's just chalk and cheese when you go back to those times of what we would think of as wet weather rugby. In our mindset, like when we were sitting there at Eden Park, Steve, when we were watching the game on the weekend, you sort of think, oh, this is going to be the ball's going to be a piece of soap and it's going to be a shocker, and it just simply wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah. We underestimate the skills of the modern players. We think back in the day when you had a leather rugby ball, and as soon as a high ball went up in wet conditions, you thought, oh no, nobody's going to catch this. They're going to drop it. But as Ryan previously said before, with the balls that they've got, with the ground conditions, there's probably not a lot of excuses. But I'm saying that you've still got to be a little bit smart about the way you play the game and
Your game plan.
Yeah, your game plan. And the All Blacks, they changed their plan, fortunately for their sake. But we'll get in that. We'll get
tomorrow. Hey, just on the, we just commented about how good the skill sets of the modern day player are. One thing that disappointed me across all the games that I saw, and I saw a lot of games on the weekend, whether it was part or whole, was the kicking. Apart from, and I've forgotten his name, our halfback for the English team, Paul Youngs. Yep. Apart from him, the kicking from across all the teams was pretty poor and pretty sort of ill-directed, lack of sort of game nous. It was just poor in general, apart from Youngs.
I think you get that kind of, it's wet, we're going to kick. And certainly players, I think they forget that you still need to kick with purpose. And I think the best part about Young's kicking was that he kicked for his chasers, and the work of guys like Underhill, May and Ashton, and putting the recipients under pressure. I mean, that's what made the kick as much as the accuracy of the kick as well. You're absolutely right. Some of the kick quality is poor, and I think it's just teams, just having it in their head, we're going to kick because it's wet, and forgetting that you need to kick with a purpose, whether it's to try and force an error, to try and pick up territory, or to have a possession yourself.
Yeah, and this is like, across all the games, it just seemed to me too many times, again, apart from Youngs, the ball was just being kicked away. And you're pulling your hair out watching the game, even when you're not watching the All Blacks playing, because obviously you pull your hair out because it's your team. But when you're watching the others, it's like, what are you doing? You've just kicked it down the throat. They've got plenty of time to catch it, have a look, and then kick it back to you anyway.
Nothing infuriates me more about a team, defending for sort of 10 plus phases and winning a turnover, on their own 22, and a guy just hoofing it to halfway and straight to a fullback or a winger. I mean, the counter-attack might not be on, but if you're going to clear territory, you've got to kick with purpose. You've got to find touch, or you've got to find open pasture. Otherwise, you're just giving possession back.
And I think, interesting, you just said open pasture. So blows me away. The fact is that all the mentality is that, I've just got a turnover in my 22. I've got to kick it as far and deep as I can, as opposed to, hang on, the fullback's gone back, the winger's gone back. There's actually space between the old attacking line and where those players have got back to. There's plenty of greenage around to basically put that ball into space.
Well, I'll bring up one example from England on the weekend where it was one time where Youngs didn't kick, and they had possession on their own 22, and they actually shifted it across the 22, and they had numbers, and it dragged the winger and centre forward from the All Blacks. And then I think it was Slade who kicked in behind and found touch down near the All Blacks 22. So that was another way of manipulating the defence who were preparing for a kick, bringing them forward to defend the possibility of a counter from inside their own end, and then kicking into that open space, that greenage, as you just coined the term. Yeah.
And when you've got it, and when you're a team like England and you've got yourself a number of kickers in Farrell, Daly's got a howitzer, a boot on him, and Slade's also a long range guy. It doesn't have to be you say. You can start to try and manipulate teams and move them around, show them different pictures. Don't give them the same option every time so they know what's coming. Make them think, because teams don't like to think, really, at the end of the day.
And I'll give you a head scratcher, Paul. So we'll go back to Super Rugby, and one of the most convincing Waratahs wins I can't remember who the opposition was. I think it might have been the Rebels. And we saw Bernard Foley kicking high balls down the channels of the sideline for Folau to go, because we know that he's going to win that aerial contest. Yet since that game, we haven't seen Folau used consistently in that role, and you know how good he is in the air. And it's just mind-boggling.
It is.
The Australians could basically have the whole game plan of kick for Folau.
It is mind-boggling as to what I think he's much better used as a right winger, as he was used in that second half against the Rebels. You just give it to Foley, bang, up it goes. Right winger contest every single time, and just keep doing that, because as you say, he's going to win at least 50-50, if not more.
Well, I think not that we've got the stats in front of us. We'd have to look at our mates at 10-14 or someone like that for those stats. But, you're probably looking at high 90% for him getting that recovery of the ball, winning that ball.
Yeah, to be fair, in that game, Dame Hewlett-Petty had gone off with a head injury early on, so they'd lost their fullback. But even so, he's going to cause issues. And you look at something like Australia at the weekend in a under the roof, dry conditions, absolutely no excuse, and they end up playing a 9-6 game against Wales. Australia's got the quality that they shouldn't be going any games without scoring a try. I'm not saying they should necessarily beat Wales. Wales are a good side, but both sides have the quality that they should be scoring tries over 80 minutes. There's no excuse for that kind of performance on the weekend.
Yeah, I think one of the issues for Australia, and I don't want to get too much into it, but a little bit like England, and once again, don't want to get too much in that, but the similarities where their lineouts, both lineouts faltered when they actually got into really good attacking positions. And I can recall the Australians being inside the 22 on a couple of occasions, and Pulilatu, not finding his markers. I believe Australia, if they can hold on to the ball for long periods, they will be a dangerous side, because they can create a lot of continuity. They've got a lot of good ball carriers, and it was just that really key component of the game that let them down. Quite frankly, I think a fair scoreline would have been a draw in that particular game. A couple of oddities that happened in that game. I never thought I'd see in my lifetime Lee Halfpenny shank 2 kicks
from in front.
Yeah, crazy.
Hey, just on those ones that Steve just mentioned, so they were off two lineouts off penalties. The commentator that we're listening to in New Zealand going, "Oh my God, I can't believe they're not going for the 3." I actually felt that was the right decision by Hooper to put it into the
streaming issue. But anyway, we're back again. It's funny that we don't say now that, or people will still say it, but it's not really true anymore that scrums win games. But it does appear to be lineouts win games nowadays. Set piece is still important, just as a different one to that. And with all these games being so, we had the USA beat Samoa with the last kick of the game. We had France beating South Africa again with the last play of the game. England, New Zealand was a 1-point win. A lot of these games were within a score. Whilst we might bemoan some of the quality of rugby that's being played, the emotion, the hype around the game, or not the hype, but the suspense around the games, we're living in a golden time from that point of view. The contest
is there in every game, and I think it's when we're discussing rugby with the likes of the four of us type scenario, or people of that ilk, we realise that any team on a given day can win a game. As dominant as the All Blacks have been, or as successful as the All Blacks have been in recent times, if they don't turn up to a game, or if they don't put their best efforts in, there's a chance that they get knocked over. And we saw that in Wellington this year. Went very close again on Saturday or Sunday morning our time to that happening again. The ability between the teams is very close. I mean, we've just talked about Australia. We know what their problems are, really. It's just holding on to the ball effectively.
I think, too, the evidence for the All Blacks too is that they only even have to be off the game for sort of 20-minute patches, and it lets teams in, and teams get on the board. So I mean that shows you just how close things are. Like if the All Blacks click for 80 minutes, I think they're far and away the best. But if they're off their game even slightly for just periods of the game, or not, they're sharpest for the whole game, teams find a way to get in and get into the contest. And you wonder whether just the psychological edge that the All Blacks have from being able to win so many close games is perhaps what propels them to keep winning. The fact that they believe that they can pull out close games, whereas a team like Australia at the moment, the Argentina comeback aside, how on earth are they going to think they're going to win games? Because they're simply not. They get in a close game and they can't finish them off.
Anyway, it's pretty much the same. They've lost one game this year, but that's when they rested a whole bunch of players for their first game in Australia. Sexton wasn't playing that game, etc. So, yeah, you've seen these. The differences are small, but once a team gets on a roll and has belief, and we've seen that again, I guess, with South Africa over France at the weekend. 84 minutes, I think it was, when they scored that last try.
Yeah, I was going to say that was a crazy game. The French, I think all they had to do was pretty much run the clock down, and it was almost to me an example of a team that doesn't know how to win at the minute in terms of France. I think they needed about 40 seconds to run the clock down, and of course they turned the penalty over. And listen, even if somebody went in there and mucked around and held the ball at least until the hooper went, it may have been enough to save them. But then there were just little things, the winger stepping on the line. And, from the moment that South Africa got that line out, I thought to myself, gee, if they pull another penalty here, they'll kick it downtown and they'll have a crack. And that's, I actually wasn't surprised that South Africa got across the line, even though it was deep into the game. I remember saying to somebody who I was watching the game with, this will tell me whether the South Africans are an improved side, if they can get across the line in this situation where they have to score. And I'll tell you what, it was perfect. And to be honest, they were probably all over the French in that last 15 or 20 minutes. They looked to me, they looked the more dangerous side throughout the game, but just little mistakes and turnovers were hurting them. But, I for one, I was delighted to see the South Africans get across the line, because I think they were the better team.
Just going back to something Ryan mentioned, Paul, in terms of the All Blacks with their 20 minutes being off the game.
You've done it all wrong. If you're not backing up the bus, then
it was. Sorry, Paul. I just got to back the truck up a bit here. Beep, 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 beep. Just to something that Ryan said. Just the other thing with the All Blacks is that one thing that started to come in this year is you're starting to see players that are able to get in and upset the All Blacks. So obviously what we've seen with Faf de Klerk with the South Africans, he's been able to come in and get under the skin of Aaron Smith, and that's sort of given the All Blacks the wobbles. Whether it's fatal or not is not, is debatable, but definitely it's had an impact of someone like, again, a Faf de Klerk coming in. It's a shame we're probably not going to see Conor Murray, even though Steve Hansen's picked him for this weekend, to see how he would have impacted on, I know he's injured. That's why I said Steve Hansen picked him. But, it would have been interesting to see how he would have, sort of got under Aaron Smith's skin, because surely they would have seen what Faf did and sort of said, here's an opportunity for us as well. And Conor Murray's a fantastic halfback, arguably the best in the world. And we're going to miss out on that opportunity to see how he would have gone and getting under Aaron Smith's skin.
No, absolutely. And but I want to move on to perhaps what was maybe the most important game of the weekend in some ways, which was Italy-Georgia. There's been lots of cries for Georgia to be in the Six Nations, and the fact they've been. And one of the things Ryan was talking about the rankings is that Georgia are ranked higher than Italy, but they've never actually beaten a Tier 1 team, and they win most of their games because they don't get to play many Tier 1 teams. Italy lose all their games because they're constantly playing Tier 1 teams. so it affects the rankings. Do you think this will put the press to bed, the media to bed around getting Georgia into that Six Nations, that win, or do you think we're still going to get the same sort of thing come around this spring in Europe?
I actually watched the last 20 minutes of that game. In fact, Italy they actually got a yellow card, and it was a perfect opportunity for Georgia to take advantage. And during that time, they actually had, I think they were 28-17, and they had 3 or 4 chances to score. And it was just really little things, passes not being quite thrown in the right place. And if they'd scored, they're almost there. You can actually just see their structures, but a lot of their backs don't have the real instinctive flair. No question. God, they don't mind a scrum. Their forwards are very tough. No question, and you can see that. You can see that improvement. Now, I stand to be corrected. I think that game was played in Italy.
It was, yes.
It was played in Italy. It'd be interesting to see if this game, if it was played in Georgia, how they'd go. But listen, they're a team definitely on the improve. They kind of remind me of, and I'm showing my age here, Romania back in the early 70s, when I can remember the All Blacks playing in Romania. They'd always play a couple of tests against France, and then head across to Romania, and that was always a tough test. I mean, to say tough in terms of they had big physical forwards, and then the revolution came along, and half the rugby team got shot, from what I believe, which is quite crazy. But that sort of things happens in Eastern Europe, and I just think Georgia are on the improve, and I think the fact that I saw their under 20s last year playing at the under 20s World Cup, and they looked in, they played some really, really good code. So it's just those little instinctive things that can make them a better team.
I think one of the things with Georgia at the moment is that their strength is up front, and if you look at their squad and where their players play, most of their forwards are based in France, but the backs are still playing in the domestic league in Georgia. And I think it's going to be developing the back line and I guess the flair positions, and probably trying to get them into either the French leagues or other European teams over the next decade to try and develop those skills until I guess the Georgian league maybe improves, or if that's ever going to happen. So at the moment they are a little bit one-dimensional. I don't think the Italy were convincing enough to totally put the conversations to bed, but they've done enough for now to at least, I guess, quieten them.
Yeah, I was going to say, so Paul, I think if anything, it's actually created more noise around it. The comment that I read from out of that game was the fact is that Georgia need more games against Tier 1 opposition to actually build their expertise and experience around playing that level of rugby. As you've said, they're playing non-Tier 1 nations. So Tier 2, and I don't even know if you call it a Tier 3 or everybody's just Tier 2, but they're playing that level, and they're basically sort of at the top of the heap sort of there, and they need to be able to test themselves more often against Tier 1 nations to get better.
I guess that's my point, is that you look at the USA, they beat Scotland during June. You look at Japan, they beat South Africa at the last Rugby World Cup, and they they drew with France in the November following that as well. So both of those teams have got results against Tier 1 teams. And I guess my point is just that, look, that Georgia, people talk about Georgia being the best Tier 2 team. I don't think they really are. I think they're behind Japan, and I think USA are looking at overtaking them. And you've also got teams like Fiji as well, who are also very good. So Georgia are going to start getting some more home. They're going to get a home Tier 1 game every July, in 2020 onwards, which is something that the Pacific Islands never get. So look, they are starting to get that. I think the other thing they could do which would be good, is getting if they had a a Pro 14 team, and maybe expand the Pro 14 by putting one team in Romania, one team in Georgia, might be a way forward as well to get a team into that. I think would be a good stepping stone for them, so that their backs do, as you say, get some quality games to play as well. I guess the other point is, finally, that rumours are that some of the articles that are written by the media backing Georgia for the Six Nations may come with a few incentives from their billionaire benefactor that backs Georgia. So I think some media might get nice little jollies to Georgia in return for writing positive articles. So I think there could also be an element of that they get a bit more noise than the other teams are because they pay a bit of cash for some noise.
I mean, I can't believe you just gone and said that. I was just about to give Steve the heads up. Is that, look, Paul's probably got a few hits out on him in the Eastern Europe, so go easy on what you say about there. Haven't you got back up with that? But hey,
I know for some reason when you talk about expansion, I think of Andy Marinos, and I think to myself, thank God he isn't running rugby in Europe because you'd have about the Six Nations would probably be the 12 nations. You'd have Russia, Germany, all over the shop. But is there a promotion relegation? Isn't that probably the most obvious thing to do? Whoever finishes at the bottom.
Yeah, they've talked about that, but although that's what Georgia keeps asking, or what people keep asking for. But the Six Nations Committee are basically like, look, we do long-term TV deals. The last thing we want to do is do a 5-year TV deal with an Italian broadcaster and have Italy relegated. So because you have those sort of those TV deals, you can't. That's basically their argument. Look, it's a privately organised competition. It's not a World Rugby one organised, and we have long-term deals, and therefore we're not having promotion relegation that would upset our basically our broadcasters. Is what it comes down to. And the other side of it is that Spain are perhaps one of the stronger women's teams, beating Wales recently and getting into the Women's Rugby World Cup, but they are locked out of the Six Nations because again, the Women's Six Nations they've decided that it will mirror the men's. So the same weekend that England play Ireland in the Six Nations, the English women play the Irish women in the Six Nations, and the under-20s game happens as well. So you have 3 games over the weekend in the same city. And which is all good because it all kind of work. It builds. They can sort of get spectators from each one, but it does mean that teams like, say, Spain, who are a very good female rugby team, are kind of frozen out from that as well, unfortunately.
I'm glad you mentioned rugby, Paul, because I know the guys may want to comment, but having watched the Black Ferns France game on Friday, on Saturday morning, I found that game a really, really good watch. It was physical. There was plenty of niggle. It was a real hostile crowd. And I tell you what, the Black Ferns had to work overtime against a very, very good French, and I don't think they've been challenged for a very long time. Thoughts, guys?
Unfortunately, I didn't see the game because Saturday morning cricket.
Okay, go now, Ryan.
I haven't seen the game either. I was still tucked up in bed at that time after a late night working Friday. But hey, I mean, France are the Six Nations champs, and I think there was never going to be any question that the Black Ferns were going to just stroll on in there and flog them. So it's set it up now because there's one more game. One more game.
Yeah.
So it set that up for a real mouth-watering battle as well. So it could be a long Saturday night, Sunday morning. Staying up to watch the Black Ferns and then followed by the ABs and trying to set up a second screen for the Māori as well. So,
wow.
It was a very...
The other game that happened at the weekend was England's women beat the USA women. The USA women really have given themselves a tough schedule, playing the Black Ferns the weekend before, then playing England, and then heading over to Ireland to play Ireland, who Ireland came third in the Women's Six Nations, I think it is. But basically, you've got France, England, and Ireland, and then you've got the rest in the Six Nations. So the USA really really are testing themselves over this window.
It's disappointing for me that the US what it looks like is that they're focusing on the sevens side of things, and some of their best athletes and best rugby players, the likes of Naya Tapper, and a couple of others, are committed to that sevens program and not part of their 15s. Because I think they're a side that, probably just below the top tier of women's teams, sort of in that next group with the likes of Canada and probably Ireland. I think that'll be a good game this weekend. But it'll be good to see those elite athletes of theirs playing in the 15s team as well. But the sevens program with the lure of Olympic medals, I think is taken priority for them, which that's their prerogative. But it's a little bit disappointing.
Same could be said for the Black Ferns, though.
No argument, but we have far greater depth, and I think that's the big difference. You could take out Portia Woodman, who's still got some young quality athletic wingers who come in. So, yeah.
Yeah, and as you talk about Canada there, Canada now going to be playing England this weekend, so it'll be good to see where they sit in that old rankings. Because, I'll be honest, the amount I follow the women's game is definitely increasing. I've not really watched been that close to it until the sort of last year or so. So it's interesting. Yeah, we're interested to see how Canada go against England as well this weekend.
Since we're talking women's rugby, anybody see the red card in the USA England game?
Well, I've seen highlights of it.
Red card or not red card? I know we're trying to steer away from controversial decisions and that, but
hashtag Neff's fault.
Yeah. Well, I suppose technically, I think it was the correct decision. I suppose it's more comes down to does the what the parameters that they work around, do they need to be looked at?
I think
it's a difficult one.
Difficult. You don't want a red card to ruin a game, and I must admit, I'm not quite sure how far through the game this one was, but she's led with the arm away from her body, and it's hit someone's neck. And I've seen too much of it in the men's game where there's a leading arm, and I think
and there's no action taken.
There's no action taken, so no, I'm happy with that. I think we should be taking the leading out, stop that leading arm personally.
There's no need for an attacking player holding the ball to lead with a forearm or an elbow.
It just makes them harder to tackle.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But it was just like, if you're going to do it, you have the open palm fend that you utilise, not an elbow into the throat.
Yeah. So yes, I can understand why I think it's the right decision. I think it is harsh, but it needs to be done.
Yeah, I mean, obviously in this scenario, the impact was at a very low force, but the fact is that you, as a referee, you haven't got a Newton meter out there to measure how much force has been applied in a tackle, so you have to go with the technical aspects of it. And when you break it down to the technical aspects of it, it's a yellow card. A red card.
Yeah, just originally if I could back the truck up even further when it comes to yellow cards. If you could think of Polu Latu getting a yellow card against the All Blacks when Cody Taylor shunted him, and then he in return shunted Cody Taylor in the face. Originally, I thought, just a penalty will do it. But when you watched it again, it was still a blow to the face. So, the referee...
A blow to the face gets away with it, well, in the sense, not gets away with it in terms of a sanction, but gets away with it because his hand landed in a way that his fingers didn't go in the eye. Now, I'm not saying he's intentionally going to gouge him or anything like that, but when you're chucking a hand at the face, these sorts of accidental situations can occur.
Sammy Rivu, I think, hit Halfpenny. He went to charge a kick down, and he had a leading forearm as well. The only difference was, I think the official at the time, and it's just escaped me who the official was for that.
O'Keefe.
but he just, and it was the right call. It showed the shot head on, and Karevi, he went for the charge down and just had his elbow up, but he wasn't even, to me, he wasn't actually throwing his arm towards the player, and it looked accidental. So it was the right call. To me, it was the right call, even though it looked really bad.
So two things there. One, if we're backing up trucks to last year, and we're talking about Ireland versus South Africa, and we had Stander jump up, and his hip caught. Who's the fly half that's been missing now with concussion for South Africa?
Lambie,
yeah, caught Patrick Lambie in the head and basically put him into concussion, and he got red carded for that one. So, was he deliberately trying to hip him or in the face? No, it was accidental contact to the face, but whether it's accidental, whether it's deliberate, isn't supposed to be taken into account. It's whether was there contact to the face, yes or no, and so hence I think Australia got a bit lucky personally.
Well, there's that whole thing about if you're reckless, right? So things happen in the flow of a game, and I think there has been a directive to referees to say, look, this guy's doing something that's a rugby action. And if he's making a tackle and a guy slips and you catch him across the head, then you take that into account when you're making a decision. But there's other actions that you can make look like a rugby action that are really designed to
have a go,
inflict damage or have a go or whatever. So yeah, it's still grey areas, and it's not easy being a referee. I can attest to that. But yeah, I think Karevi was a bit lucky.
Yep. Yeah, we'll have a split decision on the podcast here. I think two of us suggest he probably should have got a card. For which I think is actually to me, I think that's been one of the stories of the window is that Andy Farrell, what right person? Yeah, it's not Owen Farrell. There we go. Owen Farrell's tackle against South Africa. Again, I could see that it could have gone either way. I remember Andy Powell's tackle when he was for the Lions in South Africa. So back in the truck up for about 12 years now, or 8 or 9 years. And he went into
stop going beep beep beep.
He went into a tackle. Both his arms were out front, but basically the guy bounced off before he could close them, and he got called for a no-arm tackle. And I was thinking, hang on, both his arms are forward. It's a big collision. The guy's bounced off him. He just couldn't grab him in time. So I can see how Farrell's one could have been called the other way, because a similar thing happened to him. But to me, it wasn't to me, the decision was the right one. And again, last weekend with the offside, again, there's probably an offside similar to that somewhere along the line on just about every single ruck in a game. It just doesn't get called every time. So again, I can see how you can sometimes get away with it, sometimes you don't. He just didn't get away with it, which is fine.
I think what was more offensive about Owen Farrell's situation against South Africa was when he would try to do his Hollywood on the ground so he doesn't get pinged. He's on the ground going, oh, my shoulder, and it's just like, oh, dude, that's so obvious that you think you've done the wrong thing, and now you're sort of like, oh no, I'm actually injured, so don't penalise me.
Well, if you want to hear four Englishmen and a Welshman criticising Owen Farrell, go and listen to the Maul Over podcast that I recorded this morning. But if you're talking about play acting, look out this weekend for anyone who hits Sexton even remotely late, because Sexton will be rolling around on the pitch like a footballer.
There was actually a good one on the weekend, but I just can't remember which game it was in. And this is like, as soon as the noticed nothing was happening, it was like bang up because he's got to get back in the defensive line. And I just can't remember which game it was. It was a shocker. It's just like and it's like, oh crap, ref's not doing anything. Quick, get up and get in the defensive line. I want to say Argentina, but I don't want to stereotype.
You just did.
But I just did.
You just did.
Dear. Well, before we go and upset any more nationalities, what do we think of the Chiefs taking their Crusaders game to Fiji?
Crazy.
Crazy?
It's frustrating. I'm not even a Chiefs fan, but I just think, they continually keep taking games away. I mean, we saw it with the Highlanders last year as well, taking games outside of New Zealand when they're not even catering to their own supporters within their regions.
What I don't understand is why you take a derby game away.
Yeah.
I mean, that's your big crowd, and I mean,
yeah,
as a harbour-based Blues fan who never gets games anymore anyway, but the games that used to come to Albany or to Whangarei were always games against, well, normally Albany was against a South African team, and if you went to Whangarei, it was normally against an Australian team or something. But you never got a derby game because that's where you get the big crowds in. So yeah, take a game to Fiji, whatever. But why take away something that's going to probably draw a pretty strong crowd to Hamilton? The good news is it'll mean we've got one game less of cowbells. So
yes,
there's a positive there.
But you got to remember, Paul's a fan of cowbells.
I like cowbells.
Crazy.
You're mad.
Put him in a straitjacket.
Okay, if we're talking mad, this is how much I like these kind of things. I've only ever been to one Manawatu game, but
here we go.
I've got a bucket.
They don't make noise, so that's fine.
They don't make noise, exactly. Apart from the people wearing them, but the bucket itself doesn't make noise and isn't infernally annoying.
But I'm into stuff that means where you look at a crowd or listen to a crowd and go, I know who I'm watching, I know who I'm looking at, and it's not just the same crowd everywhere else. So I like to see, I like the local or the regional differences. I'm all for that kind of stuff. So yeah, no, I like bells.
Just on another, so with this game, is the objective of a Super Rugby franchise to be financially successful or to be successful on the pitch?
Both.
Yep.
Yeah, but which one? You get which one's more important? Is there one that's more important?
I guess there's a little bit. I guess is the tail wagging the dog kind of thing, but yeah, you got to be successful on the pitch to be successful financially. But if you're not successful financially, can you be successful on the pitch? So it's.
Because the Crusaders have won the last two games that they've played in Fiji, which it's always been the opposition that's taken the game there too. So it's if you look at the crowd, it seems that obviously Fijians are sort of quite bandwagon supporters, because I remember early days of Super Rugby when the Blues were successful, the Fijians were Blues supporters. Obviously,
it's because we had Rupini and Goali and.
So there's a hell of a lot of Crusaders jerseys in that crowd. Usually it seems to be more support for the Crusaders. So Ryan's highlighted the fact that you've taken a derby game over there, but not only have you taken a derby game over there, you've taken the Crusaders over there. Seems crazy. It just seems crazy to me.
Now, if someone came out and said, we are trying to build a fan base for setting up a Fiji-based Super Rugby side, then I could get behind it a lot more. But because Super Rugby won't tell us what they're trying to do in the future, maybe they don't even know, to be honest, to be fair to them. But if there was some long-term plan that you could see it was all built around, then I could get behind it. But when it's not, I find it much harder to do so, and especially as I'm now based in Hamilton. That's a game I'm not going to get to, unless they fly me out.
Get on the media team.
I'm struggling to get a media pass with the Chiefs, unfortunately.
I thought you were going to come up with a strategic plan that Andy Marinos had cast to one side. and you were coming up with the new strategic plan that Super Rugby doesn't have. I don't think they know what they're doing, to be brutally honest. We can be really, really thankful for the local derbies in New Zealand, because if it wasn't for those local derbies, boy, I think this competition would be in a hell of a lot of trouble. I personally don't like the idea of giving up a home game. It's tribal. It's there for your fans. And if you look at that Chiefs region, you've got Counties Manukau, you've got Bay of Plenty,
Rotorua, and that's split in Rotorua and Tauranga.
Taranaki.
Although I'm saying there's no stadium to go to down there. You might have to pass on that one, but there's nothing to stop them going to Taupo. There's Owen Delaney Park's a bloody good ground that holds about 15 to 20,000. So how about catering for your own
Your
people,
fans, your own
people over in Fiji? Maybe do it once in a blue moon. But I agree with Ryan. If you're going to take a game over there, I don't know, maybe play the Sunwolves up there,
Well, I mean, there's teams, I would be smart about it. Like, you have a look at the Australian teams and you go, maybe we go play the Reds there because they've got Samu Karevi, or you play the Rebels there because they've got Marika Korobetti, or, it just seems that it's, I don't know why you take the Crusaders over there. It seems there's a lack of, like Super Rugby in general, no thinking, no logic, just do stuff. And then,
I understand not taking a South African team because it's extra travel for them. But as you say, I've been to Canberra once in my life. They have an international airport, apparently, that only flies to Fiji. So take... they fly to every single place in Australia because obviously all the MPs need to get home. But the only international flights they have from Canberra are to Fiji. So fantastic. Why not take...
There you go.
That's who should go. Simple as that, the Brumbies.
With Kurandrani and Rob Valentini and their, two Fijians in their team.
Perfect. So we go. We've solved Super Rugby again.
Because it's not difficult.
But talking about difficult and some decisions. Now, I've been to this game before. I went to it when they had it in Manawatu, and I can't believe I paid this much for a ticket. But the Hurricanes are in a pre-season game sponsored by Tui Brewery, who are their sponsors, and they're going to have it at the brewery. And I've forgotten the town's name now. That's
Mangaoka.
There we go.
Or Steve will pronounce it properly, but
Go on, Steve. And they're charging $45 for a general admittance ticket. That's crazy money.
Does that come with a box?
Yeah. that comes with no allocated seat. But apparently you do get a free brewery tour, which obviously you're not going to have to be able to do on the day of the game because it's going to be too packed. So for people who go there for a day trip, that's a waste. But yeah, I just for a pre-season game, $45 just sounds like crazy money to me. I went to Ekatahuna. That's where I went to for the. And yeah, sorry about the pronunciations for those of you who don't realise I've got an English accent and can't do Pacifica pronunciations. But had a great time. The halftime entertainment was a crop duster spraying the field, which was brilliant.
Your definition of entertainment varies from mine, I've discovered.
Really, you don't like you don't like a Second World War fighter plane and a crop duster flying over the ground?
Ryan wants to go to the brewery because he's seen who works inside the brewery.
I don't believe everything I see on adverts. I didn't come down in the last shower, Ashwin.
or from the last crop duster. Oh, dear me. You're probably guessing now that I've run out of all my topics. Any last things you guys want to have a quick chat about that's been going on last week?
No, that's about it. For me. Oh, I mean, yeah.
So I'd like to apologise to everyone about the two dropouts we had on YouTube. I think my flatmates are all trying to stream movies and stuff, and conference and phone calls to Argentina. So sorry about that, but we will try and rectify that going forwards. God knows how. We'll just pray it doesn't happen. So Ryan, let people know about the Tribe Sports app and what you guys have got going on.
Yeah, so make sure you go to the App Store or the Play Store and download it. Tribe Sports app, not just rugby, but a whole bunch of sports. In terms of what we've got with the rugby coming up, we'll have live commentary of all the internationals this week. Definitely have live commentary of the Black Ferns as well, and possibly the England game, England-Canada women's. And we'll also have some commentary of the Premiership rugby, which we're starting to get more and more commentary of, otherwise live scoring. So heaps of rugby there. And if you want to have a chat with me on Twitter, see all my hot takes on the rugby and other sports, then follow me at New York Nixon.
Steve, are you on Twitter?
Yes, I am on Twitter, but I've only got about 3 followers. I think my wife
And your son. And he created an account for the dog as well.
Oh, dear. Okay, well, Steve would like to drink lots of Coke bought from petrol stations, preferably. Thank you, Steve.
No problems.
Ashwin, if, you're like I'm about to be. You're still unemployed, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm unemployed. So if you need any ICT consultancy work done, just drop me a line. NZ Fatso, DM me.
Hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul. Up there somewhere. Oh, actually, there'll be stuff on the screen which you can click on if you're watching the recording. Please do so, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. And as I say, I'll be unemployed on Monday, so do become a Patreon, please. Link down below. Give us $1 a month, and then maybe I'll be able to eat occasionally. Cheers. Bye.